What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another edition of the Sheehan Show. Me, Sean Sheehan, here on Sherdog.com. And today I am looking ahead to March in the world of mixed martial arts. I'm going to pick out 5 fights to look ahead to this month and talk a little bit about them. Maybe not necessarily from an analytical point of view, maybe a little bit, but mostly, you know, I suppose why we're looking forward to these fights and what a month we have coming up. And honestly, I've done this obviously a few times before. This used to be a regular sort of thing, but I wanted to bring it back for this month because there's an awful lot to get through in the month of March. Honestly, like, usually when I've done this before, it's, you know, you'd be picking out like, oh, maybe you'd have 6 fights or maybe you'd have 4 fights and you're kind of throwing one in there. There's actually a lot of fights this month to pick between. Like, I've left, I think 2 UFC, maybe one or 2 UFC main events out of this. So if I'm picking 5 fights, I've actually picked 4 UFC fights and 1 non-UFC fight because I'm doing the previews, as everyone knows, for the non-UFC fights anyway. So I'll be talking more about them. But there was one I definitely wanted to touch on here. So we will get to that. Before we do, just a little bit of a flavour, I suppose, of what's coming up in March. So starting off on the 1st of March with UFC Fight Night, Cape versus Ankalaev. Then there's an LFA card the week after. There's an Oktagon 69 card on the same night again as KSW. That Oktagon and KSW rivalry is really heating up and it's very, very interesting. Then we have UFC 313 on the exact same night. The week later, we have the UFC Fight Night Vittori versus the Lidza 2. The week after that, then we have Edwards versus Brady over in London and a stacked London card there. There's another LFA card in on the same night as that, and the night after there's one championship before there's another LFA card on the week after, and the month ends with the Moreno versus Erceg fight night over in Mexico City, as well as a Risen card on the 29th. So a lot to unpack there, and plus, like, as we get to the end of the month and the start of next month, we'll be very close to getting back to PFL. So very, very interesting month and 6 weeks ahead, and I want to talk about a few specific fights here, and let's get to the biggest one. Let's just start at the top. Pereira versus Ankalaev, and let's talk about it. UFC 313. The fight's going on March 8th. It's on in the T-Mobile Arena in Las Vegas, Nevada. And this is your prototypical mousetrap fight, if you want to put it that way. Like, another one I would say, and it'll be coming up in a later edition of the show maybe, Shevchenko versus Firo. Like, there's a lot has gone very well over the last few years. There looks like there might be something big on the horizon. What we have in front of you next is something very, very, very tough and very interesting, and something the fans have wanted, I think, for a long time in both cases. But let's talk about Pereira versus Ankalaev. Like, I feel, you know, when they made the fight between Khalil Roundtree and Alex Pereira at UFC 307, I think the general feeling was that the UFC are trying to avoid Ankalaev a little bit. So that was in October of 2024, October the 5th. And Ankalaev actually fought October 26th against Rakic. And, like, was there a bit of a feeling that, like, oh, maybe Rakic will help us get him out the way? I don't know. That's pure speculation on my part. But I think if you were to poll the fan sentiment, I think that's the way a lot of fans would suggest it. Now, it's funny because it's one of those fights, I think, that I'm really looking forward to now, and I think a lot of people will be looking forward to, but it's not, I don't think it's going to be like your massive money fight unless Pereira has gone to a level that even above I think he's gone to, and I think he's gone to a fairly high level because I don't know what Alex Pereira, maybe this is a podcast for another day, but it feels like Pereira has kind of transcended MMA a little bit now. I'm not talking about to the levels of a Rousey or a Jones or anything like that, but you know, I saw a clip of him with Tyson Fury the other day, and like Tyson Fury was like a fan, you know, and you talk to people about MMA, and you know, before it'd be McGregor or Jones or Rousey, whoever it be, like people who don't really follow the sport, and now they say Alex Pereira, and that's I don't know, maybe he's been excellent, and I remember waxing lyrical about him there a few months ago, but like, this guy's probably one of the most underappreciated fighters we've ever had. But maybe that's turning the corner. Maybe he is that appreciated fighter. But to get back to the point, when that happens, there is a tendency to kind of protect those guys, or not to protect is the wrong word, but to keep it running. And there is a feeling and a sentiment, again, we'll talk about sentiment here a lot, but there is a sentiment that Magomed Ankalaev is the guy who will stop that train rolling. And, okay, let's play the devil's advocate, the fan's advocate here. No, the opposite of the fan's advocate. The promotion's advocate. Let's go with it here. Why would you make a fight that would stop your biggest star rolling on? You know? Can you blame him for not making a fight? No, the fight is made. I'm talking about the fight here. But, like, should they have made the fight? And I know, you know, we all want the next best guy. We all want meritocracy and everything like that. But sometimes you see a fight like this and you're thinking, ooh, that's a dangerous fight. Like, and I'll tell you why it's a dangerous fight. Because I said a minute ago, with Shevchenko and Fiorot and stuff, we look at what's ahead. And for her, it's quite obvious, you know, fighting either Zhang Weili or maybe going up a weight and fighting. But for Pereira, like, Jones and Aspinall surely are going to fight in the summer. And if he could fight the winner of that in November, that's massive. Now, if he beats Ankalaev, it becomes even bigger. Well, you know, maybe not much, but you know, it's still there. But if he doesn't beat Ankalaev, I still think a move to heavyweight is possible. He lost to Adesanya and he's done all this, so I definitely wouldn't write it off or anything like that. But this is definitely an interesting turning point. Like, if Pereira is just taken down and badly beaten here, it could change his career forever. So let's see how that goes. The other side of it, I would say, now to go back to not playing devil's advocate here for a second, I actually think Pereira, and I said underappreciated a minute ago. I think underrated as well. And this is not a call out or anything, but just a counterpoint maybe. But I saw my guy Luke Thomas talking about him a while back and saying, like, oh, if he existed in the era where Daniel Cormier was a light heavyweight, he would never be champion and everything like that. I'm like, really? Wouldn't he? Like, okay, Cormier was good and he's obviously a really, really good wrestler and all, but, like, you know, Cormier did get beaten badly twice by a Division 3 wrestler, you know, or whatever he was, and head kicked into oblivion. And like Alexander Gustafsson, you know, a lot of people think he won that fight, and then maybe they're right, you know, and Alexander Gustafsson's not exactly, you know, a Division 1 wrestler, although his wrestling became very, very good. Don't get me wrong, you know, Stipe beat him twice. So it's like, it's not exactly like a guy like Daniel Cormier was unbeatable. And like, you could argue all those guys have better wrestling, and they do, I would say, than Alex Pereira, but do any of them hit as hard as Alex Pereira? And like, Alex Pereira has done a very good job of using what he has to avoid people wrestling him. Like, he's I used this sentence the other day with Jean Silva. Addition by subtraction. I think Alex Pereira is one of those guys where it's the less he does, almost, you know, makes the opponent do something else so that he can react and hit. And I genuinely believe, like, if he wins this fight, he won't. Like, you look at Pereira's record, right? And we forget about Roundtree for a second, but Pachka, Hill, Pachka again, Blachowicz, Adesanya, Strickland, like, he will get a lot of kudos for all of those fights, and Roundtree and the rest as well, right? But I don't think he'll get as much kudos for beating Ankalaev in retrospect if he does. But I think if he does beat him, it's one of his greatest ever victories. I genuinely think that. Because he will have beaten a guy who poses the threats that a lot of people think are his, you know, his kryptonite, or whatever you want to call it. And if he can do that, it just sends him to another stratosphere for me. It just sends him to another level. And it's hard to think about Alex Pereira going to another level because he's so bloody good. But it just might. And then Ankalaev on the other side of it, like, it's, you know, it's been a tough enough road for Ankalaev. Like, he had the Blachowicz fight, it was a draw, and then the no contest with Johnny Walker, and they need to fight him again. And, you know, that set him back 6 months. And then, you know, he should have got the title, and then it was a Rakic fight. And, you know, before that, he went through Smith, Santos, Ozdemir, Krylov, Kutalaba a couple of times. Like that's a pretty tough run there, to be fair. So, you know, I was denigrating him maybe a little bit there a few minutes ago, saying, oh well, maybe we should skip him type of thing. But no, he deserves it. He absolutely deserves it. And I look forward to seeing what he can do, because maybe he's the guy who goes in here and starts a destructive run as the light heavyweight champion. Maybe that's it. Maybe it's not. Who knows? But that's why we. Sorry about the cough. That's why we tune in to find out. Right, I could probably spend the whole half an hour talking about that fight, but let's move on. Do you know what? I have another fight from UFC 313, but we'll jump back to that in a minute. What I'm going to do next is I'll go for the our non-UFC fight next, and that fight is on March 8th. And it's on in Stuttgart, Germany, and it's Oktagon. And it's for the heavyweight title between Lazar Todev and Will Fleury. So, the reason you could say I'm a bit biased here, okay, Will Fleury's from Ireland, but I don't think any fighter has kind of burst onto the scene in their specific promotion outside of the UFC, or you could argue even Paul Hughes as well over in PFL. But you know, the non-worldwide scene, let's say that, then Will Fleury over the last year. Like if you look at it, so he was in PFL, he failed the drug test along with another 50 lads at that time, if you remember that. He fought Krzysztof Jotko, who also failed the drug test. So it's one of those ones, like, I don't think he came out as looking as badly from it as most people do. But you know, he took his slap on the wrist. He did interviews with myself and other people as well here in Ireland on mainstream, and he was very honest, very open about it. And I think he deserves a lot of credit for that too. And he's rebuilt his career. He's gone into Oktagon, fought Daniel Skivor, finished him, fought Pavel Langer, finished him, fought for the title against Carlos Vimola, and just decimated him over 5 rounds. You know, that I can't remember what the score was now, but it could have been a 50-40 type of one. He absolutely beat the living hell out of him. And now he moves up a weight class in a world where over the last few weeks we have the UFC basically saying, no, that's not allowed anymore. So I think from a place where double champs were overdone, to be one now in 2025, or is it 24? Yeah, it's 2025. I'm like, is it 2026? Suddenly it becomes special again, and that's great. And can Will Fleury do it, I suppose, is the question. He's in there against Lazar Todev. I'll be honest, I didn't know a whole lot about him until I started watching a few fights on him over the last couple of days, and this guy is an absolute beast. You know, he's I would say he's been in there with some good guys, but hasn't reached the levels I suppose he would want in the heavyweight division yet in terms of opponents. But like, you look at his record, and it's 11-6, but it's you have to look further. Out of his first 7 fights, he lost 5 of them. So started off his career as a 2-5 fighter. So 2-5. He's 9-1 in his last 10, and that's the type of fighter I think you need to look at here. His one loss was a decision, 5 rounds, and I watched actually some of that fight earlier on, and I didn't watch it in totality, so I wouldn't criticize the judges or not, but he had good moments in that fight. There's no doubt about it. But this guy, we'll talk about Fleury again in a second, but this Todev is a very interesting heavyweight. He's built. Let me look at his height here. It's actually not. Oh no, it is 6'1". Yeah, he's 6'1", but he's about 6'4" wide. A little bit like myself. Just a big unit of a man. But you should see the way he fights. He's like a sport karate fighter or something, like a little bit. Now, I'm not going to say he's full MVP or Wonder Boy or anything like that, but he fights off the back foot, low hands, trying to counter you, vicious power. Of those 11 wins, 9 have been finishes, 8 have been knockouts. He is a legit big puncher and a legit very, very good technical fighter. And again, that record, that career of his, the 9-1 career, it only started in 2018. So he made his debut back in 2014, but again, the winning started in 2018. So he hasn't really been around that long. Okay, it's 7 years at this stage. We remember we had the pandemic in the middle of that as well. He had a 2-year absence where he didn't fight at all. So it's a very, very interesting fight for Todev. The other side of it, then Fleury. I'll obviously have the preview this, so we'll talk more about it. But what he's done over the last few years in terms of his technical adjustments have been crazy as well. Like, I remember talking to him after he beat, I think it was the Tarek Sullivan fight, where he just outboxed him for 5 rounds, but a technical boxing display. And then, the UFC, they were supposed to sign him, and then they didn't really want to, because, you're going to decisions and things like that, even though it's this big fucking middleweight or light heavyweight at the time, with a great technical ability. And they were like, no, we're not having it. And I think once he signed for Oktagon, I think he was like, no, I'm not doing this anymore. Just let's put the afterburners on. He started finishing lads. He's always going to be a demon against the cage and pulling lads down and just, as he calls himself, a raw bastard. But now he's added the power. The technical ability, the technical striking has been added over the years, but he's added the power to that as well. And Jesus, he's a really good fighter. It'll be interesting. Like, he was a middleweight 3 or 4 fights ago. It'll be interesting to see what he's like going up to heavyweight now. So really looking forward to that fight. I hope I gave it the build that it deserved, because it's definitely one to watch. And that that one is Oktagon 68, March 8, over in Stuttgart. So tune in for that one. Right, let's get to the next fight. And let's skip forward a little bit here. And I want to talk about Moreno versus Erceg. That's going to be the main event, March 29th, Mexico City. Obviously, Erceg coming in here on short notice, relatively short notice, I suppose. And it's a very, very risky fight for Erceg, because he lost to Pantoja in that very, very good fight, epic fight from last year. Probably, if not the best fight of last year, probably top 5. Lost to Kai Kara France, got knocked out quickly. And now he's gone in here against a Brandon Moreno, who bounced back so well against Amir Albazi at the end of last year. He had a close split decision with Rival, close split decision with Pantoja, lost both of them. But when you've been a champion like Moreno has been before, when you're a name like Moreno is, and let's just check, where's this fight on? Mexico City. If you're Moreno and you win this fight, you not only put 2 in a row, you not only put yourself in title contention, you also put yourself in a window where the crowd are going to go so insane that it makes it a thing. Like we've seen it here in Ireland many times, or Stipe in Cleveland, or Jose Aldo over in Brazil, and it's special. That's special. And we talked about Pereira earlier on about being a special fighter. It's something which Moreno has caught a few times down through the years. And again, a guy who maybe unsuspecting to me has become a fan favorite as well, even though he absolutely should. But there's a lot of lads down through the years who should have become fan favorites who didn't. But he is one who did. But I'll tell you what, this is a tough fight against Steve Erceg. Like, Erceg, okay, the last 2 are tough and have been tough, but Erceg can hit. And he's a well-rounded fighter. I think the biggest issue with that last fight against Kai Kara France is he got so close to winning the title. And I've said this many times. It's happened to many fighters down through the years. You're almost like, right, I should be the champion. I just need to win this next fight, and I'll get back, and then I'll be the champion when I win. I'll get the title shot after that. And it's a little bit, and it's a different situation. But Luke Rockhold, Michael Bisping's like, I'm just gonna, I'll turn up there on Saturday. I'll just pick up the win, and then Sunday we'll have a few. No, you can't do that. And I don't know if he entered the fight like that. I don't know him at all. I didn't, but I couldn't help but get that feeling. Couldn't help but get it. And now that's gone, because you've lost 2 in a row. that shock to the system has been given, and the fact that he's coming in here taking a fight in short notice, I think it's a good sign, to be honest. I think he's like, nah, I'm not leaving it at that. I'm turning this around. Now, the problem with that is if you lose 3 in a row, it's big issues, because like we know what the UFC do with people who lose 3 or 4 in a row. But this guy, I think he's so good and so talented. I don't think he'll get caught if he loses this. Let's put it that way. But it's a very, very interesting fight. Obviously, the lads and myself will break it down more as we get closer to it. But for that division, with like we often say the words, "Oh, he's cleaning out the division." Latopuria talking last week. "Oh, I've done all I can do at 145." I'm like, you definitely haven't, right? You definitely haven't. But Pantoja's definitely getting there. Like, there's no doubt about that. Now, is he there yet? I wouldn't say so, but he's definitely getting there. And I think he is beating everyone who's like massively interested to a lot of people. You know, obviously maybe Kai Kara-France, maybe Manel K, maybe one certain guy who's outside of the UFC at the moment in Magomed, but there'll always be names like that. But what Pantoja has done has been absolutely unbelievable. So if he's going to continue on there, like, there are going to be opportunities for guys like Erceg and Moreno that if they can put a run together, they can get back there. So it's big freedom. And also, right, let's say he does decide to go up, or Pantoja, or maybe Pantoja loses. If you're them, you want to put yourself in that, you know, in that position to be the next guy. Especially like if you're Moreno, he beat Kai Kara-France in 2022. Okay, Erceg is on the other side of that result, but if you need to win this fight, you really do need to win this fight. So that's what I'm looking forward to. That is on March 29th in Mexico City. All right, next fight up here, and I'll be totally honest here, in case there's any continuity errors or anything like that. This fight was supposed to be Dan Hooker versus Justin Gaethje, but mere hours after recording, that fight was cancelled. So we had to pick another fight. Unfortunately, like, that was a great fight. I'll give you a bit of a spoiler for a thing that you'll never see. I actually thought that fight had the possibility to maybe turn into a fight where Gaethje with more technical and it wasn't as much of a war. So, you know, if you're thinking, okay, we're missing this one of the great wars, maybe we aren't. So the fight I'm going for instead, because that one's not happening, is maybe a less sexy fight, but I don't know, probably a more important fight you could argue. And I'm going for Jan Blachowicz versus Carlos Ulberg, which is going down on March 22nd over at UFC London. And this is a massive fight, I think, for the light heavyweight division. Like, I was just looking at the rankings there on the UFC rankings. And like, if you look at, okay, Pereira's fighting Ankalaev, as we spoke about already. And then we've Prochazka, who's lost a couple of times. Then we've Blachowicz, who obviously we're talking about here. Then we've Jamal Hill again, who's lost a couple of times. Rakic, who's lost a couple of times. And then Ulberg, and then Roundtree, who's lost for the title. And that's your top 8 then. So these are the two guys who are, you know, in line. Let's put it that way. Now, Blachowicz, okay, he lost as well to Pereira. Let's not forget about that. But he is, you know, maybe a little bit of new life here if he can beat Ulberg. But Ulberg, more importantly, is the guy. You know, he's won, 8 in a row now at this stage after losing to Kennedy Nzechukwu in 2021. I suppose he's up the level of guys who he's fighting. You know, he went from, in his last 4, Pereira to Daung Jung, to Alonso Minifield, to Volkan Ozdemir. So that's a good, I think, uptick in quality again of opponents, and he's looked good throughout the whole way. Like, and I love when I see this, right? Last 3 results: submission, KO, decision. That's, you know, and it's funny because, like, okay, he's only had 1 submission in his career, and that one. But it's good that you come to this stage of your career, you're 34, you're in your prime as a heavier guy, you're 12 fights into your career, you've taken a loss, you've bounced back from it. And it's good to see you're rounding out your game, becoming a better fighter. But in this one, it's going to be a real test for him because, you know, Jan Blachowicz, okay, he's getting on a tad now, he's 42 years of age, actually turned 42 yesterday, I believe, so as I record this, I'm not sure when this will be out now, when I'd re-edit and everything. But, like, I think we know what he is. Now, the only issue I would say for Jan Blachowicz is he's only fought twice in the last 2 years. And, you know, the draw with Magomed Ankalaev, as we all remember, was that fight where, what was it, 6 people were signed up to fight for the light heavyweight title in the space of like 4 weeks or something like that, and then it was a draw, and it just drove Dana White over the edge, and that's why Ankalaev, I think, a large part of why he hasn't gotten the chances I suppose he has deserved over the last while, although he's getting it now. But yeah, he obviously, that fight, and then the Alex Pereira fight, that, you know, was a signal that Alex Pereira could hang, I suppose, at light heavyweight. It was only 3 rounds, but he went to decision. You know, he didn't get knocked out by Alex Pereira, so I think he probably deserves a bit of credit for that. And, you know, split decision, I need to watch that one back again. Obviously, it was a split draw as well in the Ankalaev fight. So, you know, he was in there with Rakic, obviously, before that, beat him. But, like, you tend to forget, like, his win over Adesanya, you know, beating Dominic Reyes and Corey Anderson and Jacare and Luke Rockhold. Like, there's some great wins he has had over the years. But as I said, they're long ago now, nearly. You know, we're talking 5-6 years ago for some of those wins. So the question is, can he do it again? But, like, obviously that's a breakdown for the breakdown, maybe. Whereas here, like, the importance of this for the division, I think I just kind of explained that by reading out the rankings a minute ago. But let's take another look at why it's important, and I spoke about it maybe earlier on, but a lot of the chat, and I think a lot of the chat has maybe ignored this over the last while, but like, I think Alex Pereira at heavyweight is going to happen at some stage, whether it's 2025, 2026, win or lose. I think I really do. Like, Tom Aspin and John Jones are going to fight at some stage. I think most people would hope that, if not agree with that, but let's say we agree with it. What's going to happen after that? Like, is it going to be Jones versus Gann again? Probably not. Like, is it going to be Aspinall versus Gann? Yeah, maybe. That's a good fight. I'd like to see that. And then we have Jailton coming, but like, Jailton's not exactly the sexiest name in the world, is he, at the moment? You know, after losing there a couple of fights ago, or maybe, you know, maybe Curtis Blades rebounds, something like that. But again, you know, if Pereira decided to go up to heavyweight as the champion, obviously he's getting the title fight straight away. Or if he went up and like, there's like, if he fought Curtis Blades or something like that, there are some winnable fights there for him at heavyweight. But what's the point of that for this fight? Well, the point of that for this fight is, if especially Carlos Ulberg here, because it's more difficult to say with a guy like Blachowicz after, you know, losing Pereira last time out. But if Ulberg goes up here and he wins, like, he is the next guy. There's no shred or doubt about that. No doubt about that whatsoever. Like, you put yourself in line, you look good, you beat a guy like Blachowicz, you know, the former champion who, went to a split decision with Alex Pereira, who went to the draw with Ankalaev, the two lads in the title fight right now, and you do that, and you're the, you know, we talked about sexy Debs, he'll be the sexy guy then coming next. There's no shred of doubt about that. So this is like a really huge fight, and it's interesting because we often in divisions find ourselves at a place where, let the top 8, like I wrote out or read out there, there's usually maybe like, let's say at welterweight right now, right, of the top 8, you have Shavkat, who's coming off of wins, looking good. Dylan Maddalena, obviously we know what's happening with him. Sean Brady, all the same. And then even if Ian Gary, okay, he lost to Shavkat, but like, I think if Ian Gary had been given the title shot because Shavkat's injured, I don't think many people would have been mad about it, right? So you have 4 good options there, and there's probably a couple more as well. I'm bypassing, right? And you, Michael Morales and others coming. At light heavyweight, it feels like Ulberg is the only one at the moment. And if he can really secure that with a win here, it's massive. I really do think it's massive for that division. So that fight, I think it takes on a whole different kind of meaning than most fights. And yeah, definitely one to watch for March. Right, so we're 4 fights in. Let's talk about the last one here. And this is a fight that was only made obviously in the last week, but the headliner for UFC Fight Night 255 in London, Leon Edwards versus Sean Brady. And again, this is your bananas peel, sticky, interesting fight that I know a lot of people maybe wouldn't care that much about in terms of the jeopardy around it. They care about the fight indeed, but I love fights like this where, and I'll give you my favorite example, where Jose Aldo fought against Frankie Edgar just after getting knocked out by McGregor, right? And I remember someone had a tweet up at the time, he got knocked out in 13 seconds in his last fight and he decided not to get hit in this one. And he just bamboozled Frankie Edgar. I honestly believe, I'm gonna throw this out there, the most underrated performance in the history of mixed martial arts, that Jose Aldo Frankie Edgar fight. Just a shellacking in the most technical way after what had happened before, right? That happens. Some fighters, look at the opposite, and he has rebounded since, obviously, but Francis Ngannou, when he fought and lost to Stipe Miocic, what was his next fight? The Derek Lewis, one of the worst fights in the history of MMA, where they just stood there looking at each other. He couldn't pull the trigger. So those are the opposite ends of it. Is it going to be Aldo? Is it going to be Ngannou in that fight? Now, he bounced back. But that's the situation that Leon Edwards finds himself in. He just lost to Belal Muhammad. It was the middle of the night. A terrible, terrible performance. If we're being honest now, Belal did very well, but you're at a stage now in your career where you're Leon Edwards, you're 33, you're still close enough to your prime. You had just been the champion. You just beat Colby Usman twice. You're still one of the greatest fighters in the world. But can you climb that hill again? And I was going to say mountain, but I'm using the word hill instead, because I think he can. I think he can. But the thing is, now you're up against Sean Brady, and this is a guy, again, 32 years of age in his prime, only born in 1992. That makes me feel old. He's on a good run, beat Gastelum and Burns after taking that shellacking off of Belal Muhammad and bouncing back, taking a year out and finding his way. Like, it's a tremendously interesting fight. Like, Leon Edwards he's one of the, he's the guy that it's hard to understand. He's like, I was thinking about this last night, right? MMA fighters are very easy to understand for the most part. Ronda Rousey, armbar. McGregor, left hand. Jose Aldo, leg kicks, speed, skill. Tom Aspinall, power. John Jones, control. Let's put it that way. Whereas if you look at that boxing match was on the other day, Bivol and Berbatiev, and I watched like 10 minutes of it before the UFC started. And like, the technical nuances of how good guys like them are hard to understand. Like, and I don't know those guys so well, but others, like, it's, how would you describe them? I think it'd be a lot tougher to describe. Now, if you're a boxing expert or whatever, now maybe you could throw me into MMA expert, pure expert. Maybe it'd be easier to describe him. But I think Leon Edwards fits into that bracket because, like, is he a big knockout artist? No. Is he a big wrestler? No. Is he like this cardio machine? No. But he's good at all of them. He can do all of those. He's good cardio, good wrestling, good striking, good defensively in all, the two areas, and, and when you get that sort of fighter, you almost have to be good in all those areas, if you get what I mean. Like, if it falls off a little bit, like it did against Belal, it can fall off an awful lot. And I think Sean Brady is going to... So, we can talk about the breakdown, and I'm sure Sheehan Duffy will do a mega breakdown on this as always, and tune into that show as always. But if Rocky enters this fight more on the Francis side than the Aldo side, I'll tell you what, Sean Brady will not be standing around waiting for him. Sean Brady will not play the Derek Lewis role. I'll tell you that. He will go for it. And the other side of it as well, like the point I was getting to about Edwards and being the guy who can't really understand, Brady is much easier to understand. He's a block of a man who would pull you down to the ground and beat you there, or land these big shots and be the technical boxer with power behind it. I think, Brady, you look at only 3 knockouts in his ledger and you're thinking, how? Because he's such a powerful man. But that's allowed him, he's only lost once and he's been knocked, it was the Belal fight, obviously. But he's won a lot of decisions as well. And it's funny, and that might seem like a negative, right? Like, he's not the biggest knockout artist. But when you're going in against a guy like Leon Edwards, right, who, and let me pull this up again, Leon Edwards has gone to a decision 15 times and won 12 of them. You need to be worldly wise. And if you look at what Sean Brady can do, I think there should be a little bit of worry about Leon Edwards. And again, he probably needs to be having this sort of conversation with himself to get him up for this fight. Like, I cannot be the guy who loses 2 in a row. I have to be the guy who gets back to the title shot. Because if he wins this fight and maybe fights for the title in his next fight, maybe whatever happens, there'll be no more of those questions. So this is a massive fight for Leon Edwards. But for Sean Brady, you beat Leon Edwards, you're next in line. And that's how it works. And I don't think there'll be any doubt about that. You know, obviously Shavkat is there as well, and maybe there's a bit of time will be waited, but you're either next in line or you're fighting an Ian Gary, you know, and it's a number 1 contender fight, so you're definitely there or thereabouts. So that's it. Those are the 5 fights I'm looking forward to this month. Let me just recap them again. Pereira and Ankalaev, Gaethje and Hooker, Todev and Fleury, Edwards and Brady, and Moreno and Erceg in chronological order, if I'm not mistaken. So yeah, enjoy all those fights. Tune in to the Sherdog.com preview shows for all of those and for all of the other fights as well this month. So I'll leave it there. My name is Sean Sheehan for Sherdog.com, and I'll see you all next time.